Ahmet Uysal. He's a professor of Middle Eastern Studies at Istanbul University and joins us live from Ankara. Professor, good to see you, good to have you. I just want to talk about what our correspondent Nizar Sadawi witnessed about 10 minutes ago, an Israeli airstrike taking place where he is. We saw the airstrike live on our screens. Now, this is an area which is supposedly a safe zone, a designated safe zone by Israel. Tell me, what are your thoughts?
Mm-hmm. Yes, unfortunately, the whole world is watching the massacres by Israel and genocide. And also, of course, this is given by the West a free blank check to do whatever they want to do, even given to Israel. And unfortunately, also they are doing, more than necessary, more than, acceptable. Of course, nothing is acceptable, but this is too much. I mean, children and, civilian locations, hospitals, everything. And there is something, very, very suspectable after this, because I think this is Gazan people are paying the global Western hegemony in the region, in American especially, and the Western. And also they forget about the rule of law, human rights, rules of engagement. Even yesterday, the Blinken said, American State Secretary said, rules of Israeli engagement, what kind of rules they are. He said that Israel is also need to abide by these, their own rule of engagement. Of course, nobody is asking them, so international pressure is building up, and people are getting tired of this conflict. This, already one-way conflict.
Professor, certainly international pressure is building up, and people are getting tired of this conflict. But it seems to me that the Israeli government is not getting tired of launching bombs on schools, hospitals, UN shelters within Gaza. And we saw an example of that on our screens a few moments ago. So let me ask you, I don't know if you have an answer to this question, but I'll ask it anyway. What would it take for Israel to stop its indiscriminate bomb attacks, airstrikes, ground attacks in Gaza?
Yes, I think if it is left to Netanyahu, of course, he will not give it up. He just tied his career, his all 30 years of legacy, that he radicalized the Israeli society as well. And all this legacy is tied to this conflict. And he was ashamed. He was also was very failure in this 7th of October, and he want to prove himself the opposite. And of course he cannot, but he's insisting on the failing mission. And of course the sponsors of Israel, which is firstly America and the West, Europe and other allies of Israel that see Israel is protecting their interest in the region, they had to give it up. They have to see this is hurting the West more than helping, because everybody began to hate Israel, of course, but now they began to hate the West with the US blind support, the British and other countries' blind support for Israel is also there. Taken or considered as guilty in this conflict. And of course, it depends on the sponsors. If you come to your question, it is if the sponsors stop supporting Israel, Israel is not very powerful, actually. We have seen that before. Without Western support, Israel can do only so much. From the financial aspect, from the security aspect, from diplomatic, even legal and humanitarian and human rights law aspect. All these depend on American veto and also diplomatic support for Israel. So the sponsors should say no, stop. It is enough. We get tired of this, but they are not doing that. I think, but the pressure is building up, which is optimistic. Maybe now Egypt can act a little bit more because the elections are over. Sisi maybe is now more comfortable than before. And Turkey is also pressuring all sides from east to west. And Muslim also countries should pressure. They should say, either us or Israel. And their interests, of course, are bigger with the Muslim world, bigger with the Arab world, and they have to force America to choose the right side, not the wrong side. But right now, so far, they are not doing that.
And Professor, over the
Yes.
past few days, a rather odd development has taken place. Israel has expressed its willingness for another humanitarian pause or ceasefire, if you will. Now, Hamas's chief is in Egypt for talks. Tell me, to what extent do you think Egypt has leverage in this whole situation, and what role exactly can Egypt play when it comes to reaching that humanitarian pause or ceasefire?
Egypt doesn't have a big role, but they have some role. They don't have, much leverage on Israel. They don't have much leverage on Palestine, on Hamas. They opened the Rafah border when Israel allows them, and of course, Hamas people or general Gazan people, they want to be open all the time because there is a huge humanitarian disaster, tragedy inside Gaza, and Egypt is listening to Israel mostly, and this is of course doesn't please Palestinians or anybody in the world, and Egypt can do more and should do more, I think, after this, especially the elections are over now, and they have some more freedom against Israel because Israel maybe or the West overall was pressuring Egypt to do less. Now the pressure, I think, is less than before, so they can. They have to give something to Hamas to accept. If Egypt wants to mediate, should be like neutral mediator. So far, I don't see that, but they can. Of course, they have communications with both sides, and they can play a better role than the currently happening. They can open even the humanitarian law, international law allows humanitarian aid, not only just because Israel says so. There is America invaded Iraq on the humanitarian legal basis. If we accept it, and Egypt can say there is a humanitarian tragedy and mass suffering, children are dying. They can pressure Israel, or they can provide more help, or also use this as a leverage to pressure Israel to come up with a humanitarian pause or a ceasefire, maybe in the long run or medium run.
Professor Ahmed Uysal, thank you very
Yes.
much for talking to us here on TRT World. Really appreciate your taking out the time.